Somewhere on the northern edge of Japan, on an island most people outside of Asia have never heard of, there are people who do not look like anyone else in the country. Lighter skin, deep-set eyes, heavy beards, bone structure that confused every European anthropologist who encountered them. For over 2 centuries, the Western explanation was that they must be a lost white tribe stranded in Asia, a Caucasian population somehow marooned on a frozen Japanese island with no explanation for how they got there. The Japanese government had a simpler answer. They passed a law in 1899 calling them former aborigines and spent the next century trying to erase them entirely. Then, geneticists sequenced their DNA. The lost white tribe theory collapsed. But what replaced it was stranger than anything the Europeans or the Japanese had imagined. The Ainu carry a genetic marker so rare that it exists almost nowhere else on Earth, except 2 places no one would ever think to connect. One is a frozen island off the coast of Japan. The other is a monastery on a mountain in Tibet. I came across this while researching haplogroup distribution in East Asia. I expected the Ainu to be a footnote. They turned out to be one of the oldest unbroken human lineages still walking the planet. Start with the people themselves. The Ainu are the indigenous population of Hokkaido, the northernmost of Japan's 4 main islands. Their territory once extended across Hokkaido, Sakhalin Island, the Kuril Islands, and parts of the Tohoku region of northern Honshu. Their language, Ainu, is what linguists call a language isolate. Like Basque in Europe, it belongs to no known language family on Earth. It has no confirmed relatives, no parent language, no cousins. UNESCO classifies it as critically endangered. Only a handful of fluent speakers remain. The Ainu practiced animism, worshipping natural spirits they called kamui. They were fishers, hunters, gatherers, and farmers. They carved wood, wove textiles, performed elaborate ceremonial dances, and maintained an oral tradition that stretches back further than most written histories on the continent. One of their oldest legends says simply, the Ainu lived in this place 100,000 years before the children of the sun came. The children of the sun is their name for the Japanese. When European explorers reached Hokkaido in the 1700s and 1800s, they were genuinely confused by what they found. The Ainu looked nothing like the Japanese populations to the south. Early accounts described them as having lighter skin, round eyes, full beards, and wavy hair. European anthropologists, operating within the racist frameworks of the era, immediately classified them as Caucasian. Some proposed they were descendants of a lost European migration. Others suggested they were related to the Celts. One theory linked them to ancient Greeks. None of these theories had any evidence beyond superficial physical resemblance. But they persisted for nearly 2 centuries because nobody had a better answer. The Ainu simply did not fit the model of what an East Asian population was supposed to look like. The Japanese government did not care where the Ainu came from. They cared about Hokkaido. In 1869, the Meiji government annexed the island and renamed it from Izoki, meaning the land of the uncivilized people. In 1899, the Imperial Diet passed the Hokkaido Former Aborigines Protection Act. The title itself was the strategy. By calling them former aborigines, the government was declaring that the Ainu no longer existed as a distinct people. The law banned their language in schools. It seized their land. It prohibited traditional hunting and fishing, removing their primary means of survival. Children were forced into Japanese schools and taught to abandon their identity. After World War II, Japan rebuilt its national image around ethnic homogeneity. The Ainu were so thoroughly assimilated and so thoroughly marginalized that many were encouraged to hide their ancestry. For decades, the official position was that Japan was a single ethnicity nation. The Ainu vanished from public consciousness. The law that erased them stayed on the books until 1997. Japan did not officially acknowledge the Ainu as an indigenous people until 2008. Today, the official count is roughly 25,000 Ainu in Hokkaido, though unofficial estimates suggest up to 200,000 people of Ainu descent live across Japan, many of them unaware of or unwilling to disclose their heritage. Then the DNA was tested. The results destroyed the Caucasian theory completely. The Ainu are not European. They are not related to any Western population. What they are is something far older. Genetic analysis revealed that the Ainu belong predominantly to Y-chromosome haplogroup D, specifically a subgroup called D1b. This is a lineage so ancient and so rare that it exists at significant levels in only 3 populations on Earth: the Ainu of Japan, the Tibetans of the Himalayas, and the indigenous people of the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean. 3 groups separated by thousands of miles, living in completely different environments, speaking completely unrelated languages, with no historical contact of any kind. Yet they share a paternal genetic marker that traces back to one of the earliest human migrations out of Africa, roughly 60,000 years ago. Haplogroup D is believed to have originated in a small population that left Africa and traveled along the southern coast of Asia. As later migrations swept through the continent, carrying haplogroup O and other lineages that now dominate East Asian populations, the original D carriers were pushed to the margins, to islands, to mountains, to places that were difficult to reach and easy to defend. The Ainu ended up on the frozen northern edge of Japan. The Tibetans ended up on the highest plateau on Earth. The Andamanese ended up on isolated islands in the Indian Ocean. 3 refuges, 3 remnants of the same ancient migration, connected by nothing except the DNA they still carry. The deeper finding is what the Ainu actually represent in the genetic history of Japan. They are the closest living descendants of the Jomon people, the original inhabitants of the Japanese archipelago, who arrived over 14,000 years ago and built one of the most remarkable prehistoric cultures in the world. The Jomon created some of the oldest known pottery on Earth. They lived across the islands for over 10,000 years before a second wave of migrants, the Yayoi, arrived from the Korean peninsula and mainland China roughly 2,300 years ago, bringing rice cultivation. The Yayoi mixed with the Jomon across most of Japan, producing the modern Japanese population. But the Ainu, isolated on Hokkaido, absorbed far less Yayoi admixture. Their DNA retains the strongest Jomon signal of any living population. A 2017 study estimated that modern Japanese people in Tokyo carry roughly 12% Jomon ancestry. The Ainu carry dramatically more. They are not a lost tribe from somewhere else. They are what was already here. The original layer. The foundation that everything else in Japan was built on top of. The Ainu did not vanish because their DNA failed them. They were declared former aborigines by a government that needed their land. Their language was banned. Their children were taken. Their identity was denied for over a century, and yet roughly 25,000 of them remain in Hokkaido, carrying a genetic lineage that connects them to Tibetan monks and Andamanese islanders through a migration route that is 60,000 years old. The Europeans were wrong. The Ainu were not white. The Japanese government was wrong. The Ainu were not former anything. They are one of the oldest continuous human lineages on Earth, and the only reason we know that is because the DNA survived what the policies could not erase. Paul here. If this changed something for you, subscribe. The next one goes deeper.